Well folks, we are already at the last vehicle, or technically vehicles if you want to count the two different variations, both of which I'm going to be talking about in this same video, of Gran Turismo 7's 1.29 update. It's been a pretty damn good update, I think, in terms of overall content, much better than I initially thought it was going to be, as mentioned, and this is probably the car which for many players they will be at the very least less interested in, and I know for some not interested at all. It's an unfortunate thing about the Vision GTs, but even though I enjoy them myself, I can understand where people are coming from, preferring real-world cars over these. Certainly if the car is a bit oddball looking, as this one is. Now this car does not have a cockpit view, which is unfortunate, some of them still don't. And in terms of performance, it's a bit of a weird one, because it has some very obvious ties to the Parcour concept, and also it reminds me of the Aixam Megatrack, which is personally my favourite of the off-road supercars. And of course off-road supercars are becoming more of a thing currently, with a couple of brands doing that, including Lamborghini. This one's powered by a V10 engine, uses some battery assistance, as so many performance cars are these days as well, has up around 1200 horses. It's nowhere near as heavy as it looks though. In fact, it weighs, because of not being real, 1,000 kilos, exactly 1 metric ton, aka the same weight as a Nissan R390 GT1 race car was in the past of the series. So that's pretty light, and it doesn't really matter how light it is until you see this thing next to other cars. As you can see here on the circuits that I'm taking it on, especially at Le Mans, this is a big car. It's a really big car. It dwarfs Chirons and Veyrons, and they are not small vehicles necessarily. So to be that light is definitely a stretch of the imagination. In terms of the horsepower per ton, well of course it's easy to work out. 1,000 kilos, 1,200 horses, 1,200 horsepower per ton, and the point level is, as you would assume, quite high, although not crazy. On both of these, the street mode and the off-road mode, it's up around the 800 point region, but it really is the difference between these two cars that I find most curious, because I'm going to cut to the chase at this point of the video, because I actually do not think that you need to buy both of these. In fact, the one that I think you should buy might surprise you. I think you should only buy the off-road version. Why? Well, put simply, two reasons. One, neither of these cars are very good off-road. They're quick, but there's a difference between a car being quick off-road and feeling adept at it. And some will doubtless disagree. I'm sure there are people who love using this. And for some perspective, on the dirt track that I was using it on here, it's not that far behind something like a Suzuki Escudo. That certainly sounds very good. But ask yourself, would you rather use this or an Escudo? I know which one I would rather use. On-road though, it's a different story, especially with the off-road version, and that's the weird thing, because not only, as I mentioned in my review for the whole update, does the off-road version not even come with off-road tyres as standard, which is an odd choice, but also it actually drives better on the tarmac than the supposed street version does, at least in my opinion. And as a pretty cool little aside, you can actually use it to grind for cash at Le Mans. And you'll see some footage of me doing just that in this video, and it's really good. In fact, it can do the entire event without pitting in once, even on intermediate tyres. And of course, it was typical Murphy's Law that in the one time I used this car, it didn't rain. It always rains for me, and it didn't rain when I used this one, so I'm sure it is good in the rain anyway, with intermediates and four-wheel drive, of course, or all-wheel drive. It's a great car. I will say that once you use up the battery power, the performance does drop, so lap times certainly aren't the quickest thing around, but it's more than quick enough to easily win the event. Just by the nature of not needing to pit in at all, I won the event by like 2.5–3 minutes. So it's a superb car to use. The fuel economy is fantastic on it. It's relatively quick, up around 160 or more, depending on your fuel use and if you've still got battery power left. And yeah, it's a really good car. A surprisingly good one, and I think part of the reason why I like the off-road version more is because it really does remind me even more of something like the Parcour or the Megatrack than the supposed street version does. Not to say that the street version is bad, but the point level is already higher to begin with, so you have to detune it more, and to me, the road version feels kind of, well, for want of a better term, boring. It kind of just feels like a more powerful reskinned Lamborghini Huracan, which just doesn't really interest me that much. It's good, it's quick, the handling is forgiving, and you can get some nice, almost Rimac-esque drifting on with it. that the off-road version just has more personality. The way it kind of bounces around a little bit more, and of course being a Vision GT, there's not much tuning you can do to it, unfortunately, but what you can do in terms of adding some ballast, reducing some power, and then throwing it around the track, it's just more fun in my opinion. Now, for those who don't like Vision GTs, I would not say that this is going to be the one that wins you over. If anything, I'd say get like a Tomahawk or a Chaparral, those are the most out-of-the-box ones. This one though is a pretty solid choice if you want to earn some money with one, or if you just want to drive something that's a little bit different. The reason as well why I like, or yet another reason why I like the off-road version, is because the off-road version really does feel like a more literal interpretation of the on-road off-road combination. You know, the on-road version feels very much on-road only. The off-road version can do both. And even though I don't like either of them off-road, as I said, well, of course the off-road version has the advantage already, but then on-road, the fact that it has more fun factor, it's more charismatic, it looks more interesting to be flying around the track in this borderline monster truck of a hypercar, it's just a weird choice, and that's why I kind of like it. For 1,000,000 credits, like I said, I would not say you need to buy both, but I would love to hear what you guys think as well. I'm sure there are some people who prefer the street version. Maybe you found one to have a particular advantage over the other. For me, those are my recommendations though, and my thoughts on this one, and that wraps up my thoughts of the new cars in 1.29. And I may do some more condensed thoughts or a review on my experience with Sophie in this update as well, because it is a very significant addition to the game, and I think it does warrant talking about a bit more, so stick around for that in the coming days as well, especially for those of you who are on the PS4 version who don't have access to Sophie, so it would be beneficial, I think, to hear some more information about that. But for now, that's it for my thoughts on these cars. Give me your thoughts down below, and if you haven't checked out the other reviews for the Citroen, the Porsche, and of course the Honda Grand Prix machine, then of course check those out. But until next time, I'll see you then, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.